Good day, my name is Zhen Jie, and I will be explaining my conclusions in sections 1 and 2 on how different views, evidence, and uncertainty shape my independent judgment. Section 1 examines the moral issues surrounding Shein's fast fashion model. First, Ross' prima facie duty theory showed that duties can conflict. Non-maleficence, justice, fidelity, and reparation support preventing harm, keeping commitments, and correcting established wrongs. However, beneficence matters because affordable clothing, employment, and supplier orders create benefits. I give greater weight to non-maleficence and justice because the reported harms are serious, foreseeable, and concentrated on less powerful stakeholders. My conclusion was a controlled reform rather than abrupt withdrawals, which would create further harm. Moving from competing duties to human dignity, Kant's second formulation of the categorical imperative does not prohibit employment. It prohibits treating people merely as tools. Voluntary work and affordability form a defense, but consent becomes less meaningful when poverty, forced overtime, or misinformation limits genuine choices. Therefore, reform must respect workers as persons with their own ends, rather than merely protecting Shein's reputation. Ethical relativism required me to consider local living costs, opportunities, and values instead of assuming that one context fits every society. It goes beyond observing differences by claiming that group standards determine moral rightness. Yet culture is not uniform, and powerful firms or suppliers cannot define a community's morality. Reported labor law violations and fundamental labor protections reveal these limitations. Cultural context should shape how standards are applied, but should not make coercion or serious harm acceptable. Finally, my own position primarily uses Rawlsian difference principle of distributive justice. The difference principle asks whether among feasible arrangements, inequality benefits the least advantaged the most. The proper comparison is not simply employment against unemployment, but the existing model against a phased alternative that preserves work while reducing harms. Libertarianism protects voluntary agreements, and utilitarianism recognizes jobs, affordability, and the dangers of abrupt withdrawal. Still, aggregate benefits cannot conceal concentrated harm. I therefore defend phased worker and community-centered reform with fair saving terms, independent due diligence, local voice, remedy, and measurable environmental targets. Moving on to section 2, it tested a different skill, questioning and refining an AI response. I chose the 2021 ABC Montara article as my moral issue, as you can see here on the screen. So, moving back, for prompt 1, it broadened my view beyond blame by adding duties, welfare, and justice. However, it generalized Daniel Sanda's proven loss to other farmers and wider environmental damage. Prompt 2 clarified that PTTEP's negligence and Sanda's loss were established, while wider individual claims remain uncertain. Uncertainty limited extent, not responsibility for proven harm. Prompt 3 moved from certainty to fairness. PTTEP had greater access to records, experts, and lawyers than small farmers. Stakeholder theory and environmental justice therefore supported community participation and investigation funded, but not controlled by PTTEP. And Prompt 4 separated two forms of responsibility. PTTEP had the direct duty to operate safely, while regulators had distinct duties for scrutiny and enforcement. Shared responsibility adds obligations, it does not dilute either party's accountability. Prompt 5 compared utilitarianism with environmental justice. Petroleum may provide energy, jobs, and public revenue, yet aggregate gains can conceal risk concentrated on communities receiving little benefit or power. In this case, environmental justice should constrain a purely utilitarian calculation. And in prompt 6, I tested PTTEP's strongest defense. Petroleum activity is not inherently wrong, scientific uncertainty and reasonable proof does matter, and regulators also failed. This changed the scope and method of remedy, but did not remove responsibility for negligence and the proven harm. Prompt 7 asks who received the benefits and carried the risk. Compensation may correct proven loss afterwards, but cannot make the original risk distribution fair. Prevention, information, and participation are therefore necessary. Prompt 8 made the remedy practical. Compensation, supported livelihood recovery, independent ecological investigation, and preventions. PTTEP may fund these measures, but funding must not become control. Timely relief must be balanced against unsupported claims. Prompt 9 criticized the AI. A comprehensive remedy can sound moral while exceeding the evidence. Because only Sanda's loss was established in the discussed judgment, Broader programs had to remain conditional and independent scientific, economic, and community evidence. AI can favor complete-looking solutions before testing their factual foundation. Content brought the reasoning into a qualified judgment. The article describes the position in 2021 before the 2023 settlement. So the AI's instruction to pay compensation now is historical rather than current. The settlement changed the legal context by continuing moral duties, including fair distribution, independent oversight, evidence-based further actions, and preventions. My final judgment is that PTTEP bears primary responsibility for established harm, while regulators hold separate oversight duties. Proven harm requires remedy, broader remedies require evidence. This drill down changed my thinking from broad blame and restoration to a proportionate, evidence-based judgment that protects vulnerable communities without treating uncertain claims as proven. Thank you.